Ologun of Oka Akoko, the indomitable warlord. The land of Oka Akoko was not just another town in the Yoruba kingdom. It was a fortress, a land of warriors whose strength was whispered across the forests and rivers of the region. At the heart of its legend stood the Ologun of Oka Akoko, a warlord whose name alone sent tremors through the hearts of kings and conquerors. They said his skin could not be pierced by iron, that the ground cracked beneath his feet, and that the war drum of Oka Akoko never beat in vain. When it sounded, it meant only one thing: war. But Ologun was not just a warrior. He was the shield of his people, the wrath of the gods in human form. And when the tides of war rose against Akoko land, he stood between his people and destruction. Battle against the Benin Empire. When the leopard met the lion. The Benin Empire, mighty and expansive, sought to extend its reach beyond the Niger River into the heart of Yoruba land. They had conquered many towns before, their warriors adorned in red, their swords sharp with the blood of the fallen. They believed Oka Akoko would fall as others had. They were wrong. The siege of Oka Akoko. The armies of Benin arrived at the borders of Akoko, their warriors chanting in the language of conquest. They expected submission. Instead, they met silence, an unsettling quiet from the people of Oka. Then, under the shadow of a great tree, Ologun appeared. He stood alone at first, his war staff in one hand, his other hand resting on the hilt of his charm-forged sword. Behind him, the warriors of Oka emerged, their faces painted, their bodies adorned with charms that glowed under the setting sun. The first clash was swift. Benin warriors rushed forward, believing their sheer numbers would overwhelm the Akoko warriors. But Ologun did not retreat, did not even blink. Instead, he threw his spear, and the air howled as it cut through the sky, striking the first warrior dead. The battle raged for 3 days and 3 nights, and for the first time in their history, the Benin army suffered a defeat so devastating that they abandoned their conquest of Akoko land forever. The war against the Nupe raiders. When Ologun fought the slave merchants, the Nupe warriors were feared across Yoruba land, not just for their military strength, but for their ruthless slave raids. Many towns had fallen to their cavalry, and those who survived were dragged in chains, never to return. Ologun swore an oath before Ogun, the god of iron. No Nupe warrior would ever set foot in Oka Akoko again. The ambush at the river. Knowing the Nupe raiders traveled by river, Ologun devised a brilliant trap. He allowed the enemy to enter deep into Akoko land, luring them into a narrow pass between 2 great hills. Then, under the cover of night, he struck. The warriors of Oka blocked the only escape route while Ologun stood at the forefront, his eyes burning like hot coals. With a single chant, the drums of Oka thundered, and the battle began. The Nupe cavalry was useless in the rocky terrain. Their warriors fought in confusion, unable to see the Oka warriors who struck from the shadows. Ologun himself cut down their leader, raising his bloodied sword to the sky. By dawn, the Nupe forces were no more, and in the years that followed, they never dared to return. The war against the Fulani jihadists, the battle of the Iron Will. The Fulani jihadists swept through the lands like wildfire, bringing war and religion, burning towns and forcing their rule upon those who submitted. They had defeated many Yoruba towns, believing that Akoko would be no different. But they had never fought a man like Ologun before. The stand at the sacred forest. The Fulani army, led by a powerful war chief, entered Akoko land, expecting the town to fall swiftly. Instead, they found empty streets and a forest that seemed to whisper their names. Then the sky darkened. From the trees, warriors descended like spirits, arrows whistling, swords flashing. battle was not fought in the open. It was fought within the shadows of the sacred forest, where every tree became a soldier, and every branch seemed to move against the invaders. The Fulani war chief charged at Ologun, believing his faith would shield him. But Ologun raised his war staff, and the very ground swallowed the warrior whole. The remaining jihadists fled in terror, swearing never to return. And so, Oka Akoko stood unshaken, never conquered, never broken. The legacy of Ologun. Of Oka Akoko, Ologun was not just a warrior. He was a legend, a force of nature, a warlord whose name would never be forgotten. They say that to this day, when the wind howls through the hills of Oka Akoko, it carries the sound of a distant war drum. And when warriors prepare for battle, they whisper his name for strength. Because the Ologun of Oka Akoko never truly died, his spirit still watches over the land, waiting for the next great war.